Welcome to episode 126 of Creativity Talking. Today, V brings in Seth Kustush, photographer and Spiderman fan. There you go, Mr. V.
Hey, Biff, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good.
Well, this is, hey, everybody. What's going on? It's V. Here's Seth Kustush, my son.
How's it going? I'm Seth Kustush, his son.
And we're about to go see Spider-Man No Way Home because Seth is a huge Spider-Man fan, as is his old man.
I could not sleep for about the past week. Probably went to bed at 4 a.m. every night, or every morning, just because I could not sleep because of how excited I was for this movie. So I think that's a measure of how pumped I am for this film.
Well, you're 21 years old, and you came up with all the Spider-Man movies. That was your Star Wars was Spider-Man.
100%. 100%. And seeing all the different iterations and stuff, it's crazy to actually think, because I know we have talked about it all throughout our life, of seeing all three Spider-Man in a film, even before Spider-Verse had came out, the animated movie.
Absolutely.
So I think, I just think it's insane how it actually came to fruition, and Sony was able to make a deal.
And there's one word I can't wait to hear in the movie theater. Parker!
Oh, yeah. I will probably tear up when if I do hear Tobey Maguire, if, quote-unquote, he does show up, which everybody knows, obviously they do. I want him to say the line, with great power comes great responsibility. If that comes out of anybody else's mouth, that is my one take on the film that I do not like about it, previously going into not knowing anything, but that's the one thing I will not like if it's not said by Tobey Maguire.
Yeah, and I'm wondering, there's got to be some type of Stan Lee acknowledgement in this movie, even though they're not doing the, there's pictures and stuff, but there's definitely has to be something.
I would hope so. At least, I'm sure. I mean, I would hope there's at least like a book with a cover, and the author is Stan Lee, and the book is red or something, to symbolize Spider-Man or something.
Yeah. So basically, just wanted to say something real quick before we head out to the movie, and edibles are in my coffee, and I'm ready to go. And
Joint's about to be smoked, and movie's about to be watched.
Yeah. So we'll see you in a few because.
Spider-Man!
The tone's probably going to be different as soon as you hear her voice the next time. So
Sure, we might be a little slower. But okay, guys, we'll see everybody in a minute. Biff, you got it?
Oh, yeah. I'll guard the whiskey.
Sounds good. See you in a few.
Well, the boys seem to be back from the film. Here you go, guys. Take it away.
All right, that was the best that was great.
that was my all-time favorite movie now, and it is the all-time best comic book movie, I will say. And speechless in terms of just giving an overall review. So I say we're just gonna break it down, kind of Act 1, Act 2, Act 3.
Yeah, this movie, I think the world needed this movie at this particular time because I think it might go a long way to save some theaters or something, or at least get some ass in the seats,
It was so I'll just start off with the first act. It was extremely fast paced, just enough fast paced where I wasn't losing control of the story or anything. But it had shown that time is passing and people know who Peter is. They weren't going to waste a bunch of time of Peter being at school, recognized, and a bunch of stuff. It was kind of a breeze through of how Mysterio's revealing of Spider-Man affected him in the beginning. And then he realized that it's starting to become a huge problem. And that's when, he sees Doctor Strange, like light bulbs in his room, and he's got the thought to go talk to Doctor Strange and whatnot. And then going from there, he what you see in the trailers is true. He does the spell and everything. What I did notice is that Kevin Wong in the trailers said, "Strange, whatever you do, don't cast that spell." And then in the movie, it was like, okay, just don't do anything stupid. He was total consent, so that completely changed that. And for us thinking that Doctor Strange was evil off the bat and stuff with Wanda in the Doctor Strange movie coming out. So I thought that was pretty interesting in terms of the advertising from them. But Dad, what are your thoughts on the first act?
Well, he didn't seem like as off as he did in the trailer, Doctor Strange.
Extremely true.
He just happens to be, since this is spoiler filled, by the way, the reason Doctor Strange is aloof is because he's no longer the Sorcerer Supreme.
Yeah.
And so he didn't have to take it as seriously, so he was kind of the lackey, even though he didn't want to be the lackey. Mm-hmm. Not that Wong's a lackey, but you know what I mean? The sidekick, so to speak. But no, I thought they passed through the school and, you know, they showed the dark side and the positive side of being, and the funny, hilarious side of celebrity in its own way. And right off the bat, like you said, in the car ride back is, he was basically Spider-Man in the first 5 minutes of the movie.
Yeah, he was like the most comic accurate animated Spider-Man ever in the first 5 minutes in terms of freaking out and picking decisions that would be irrational to other people, but because he's Spider-Man, he's just going to go through the subway real quick and, you know, tell MJ to get his hair off his mask and stuff while she's just swinging around and whatnot. And then, of course, I feel like you actually got to feel like Spider-Man in the first 5 minutes because he just went up to the top of a bridge to space out, because that's what Spider-Man does when he wants to get away from everybody, but you can't because now your whole, you know, shindig was revealed, you know. Right. And so I thought that was totally cool because, like, if I was Spider-Man, I'd probably do that. And I would, you know, go to the top of a bridge or something, but you can't anymore. So I thought that was pretty cool to feel like Spider-Man, too.
Yeah, and then his apartment is basically, or Aunt May's apartment is basically getting surrounded by, you know, there's people knocking on the door. He's trying to get all the shades drawn. There's helicopters in the air, all this other stuff. And Happy is, they walk in, and Happy and Aunt May are in the middle of a awkward breakup. And then, you know, that's when Peter and the MJ and Ned.
Yeah, good on Happy for finishing what Tony couldn't, you know what I'm saying? And, you know, what, yeah, but, yeah, and then from there, they went pretty much right into the battle on the bridge that you saw.
Yeah. So what happened was everyone was trying to get into MIT, and because of the actions of being associated with Spider-Man,
They couldn't get accepted.
MJ and Ned weren't accepted, and Peter wasn't accepted either.
And so, yeah. To be very specific, Spider-Man goes to the bridge and tries to convince one of the uppers, the head people in the MIT college group, that, you know, to give them a chance. His friends, that is MJ and Ned, not him, being selfless and whatnot. And that's when he runs into Doc Ock, and yeah, it was pretty crazy how little you saw from the trailer. Thinking that, you know, I think it was 3 weeks ahead of the film was supposed to release, you had no trailer, and then it was just flooded with TV spots, and they really only gave you an extra few seconds from what you did see in the first initial trailer, which I thought was really good because people did a great job at keeping this movie under wraps and not saying anything. I will say I did see a few things on YouTube and Instagram, just thumbnails, that did spoil a few things. Very minor, but in terms of Spider-Men being in the film, I was like, okay. But I think they did a terrific job with that as well, in terms of keeping everything in wrap, and like nobody said anything about this film, other than Sony advertising it and acting like they weren't, and just leaking everything that they, you know, felt need to.
Well, yeah, and then you stayed up all night trying to get in the queue for the tickets just so you could see it first day, so you didn't have to worry about not going on social media or YouTube because we knew it was going to get spoiled immediately.
Yeah.
At least in the title of this thing, it says "spoiled review."
And
you know,
to add on to that was so bogus. I waited 3 hours. It's like 2 to 3 hours. I don't even know what it was, just to get into picking my seats and everything, and then it crashed. And so then I decided just to do it old school and drive to the theater and purchase the tickets and pick my seats there, because I know nobody's going to be in line doing that shit. Mm-hmm. So I thought that was definitely the way to go about it, because I was tweaking, you know, and I was like, I don't know if I can get these tickets and blah, blah, blah. But it was weird because it did say it was sold out and everything. Our theater, I checked like about 5 days ago, there was only two or three seats not booked. And the theater was only like maybe half capacity. I'd say half capacity. And so, I don't know. I thought that was kind of weird. I figured it'd be like a first packed theater experience post COVID and whatnot. I was kind of looking forward to that, to be honest. But there was still very strong crowd reaction, even from half capacity.
Oh, for sure. And I mean, we had people on both sides of us, in front of us and back of us. The whole top section was packed, but the little front section, there was no one seated there.
Yes, yeah. It was probably a bit more than half, and super strong audience reactions, which is the main thing I wanted.
Yeah, the audience loved it.
Yeah. And but going back to where you see Doc Ock in the trailers on the bridge scene, after Peter talks to the MIT person who's higher up, you kind of see what you saw in the trailers, of course, a bit more. And what I thought it was kind of weird is that they showed the exact same amount in the trailer of Gabi in that scene as they did in the movie. And I thought that was super weird and almost offensive to me because Green Goblin's my favorite fucking character from the old movies and stuff. So I was almost like, wanted to slap a Sony executive or something for choosing to do that. But, or actually a Columbia Records executive because that's their intellectual property, to be specific. But no, I thought that was really smart. The way they, went right into trying to capture everybody, and you had a feeling that Doc Ock was going to be good from the beginning if you have watched those movies before, because you know his true character arc and what happens when the tentacles are, in control and whatnot. So I thought that was really cool, and they did a good job of bringing them all together. That didn't feel super fast, and it didn't feel slow or dragged out either. It was like, all right, there's a big battle at the end that we have to get to. We need to bring these guys together, but we don't want to give it too little of time. So I thought that was really cool. What order did it go into?
It was in order to get so basically, Doctor Strange fashions this what do you call it? An amulet?
Yeah.
Some kind of arm fucking thing, and basically it's like a tentacle, so he can shoot like a web. This thing, okay, and when it touches a person, it sends them through a magic portal, into a prison that they can't get out of. So basically, from the end of the last movies, the series, when they're trying to gather the Sinister Six, this is basically what they did: is they gathered the Sinister Six.
Mm-hmm. Sinister Five.
Right.
Yeah. Sinister Five. Yeah. Which I was kind of expecting them to bring the actual Sinister Six to the film, but they did not, and they did show Venom. Towards the end in a post-credit scene, which was super minor in my opinion, just because it showed how minor of a role he had in that universe at the time, other than, I will skip ahead a little bit, other than that last bit of symbiote leaving in that universe to then probably find his way to Spider-Man. But, I thought it was kind of funny because it totally went with the comedic lines of Venom and stayed true to that universe in terms of like, yeah, Venom probably wouldn't get involved in this stuff. Because like in Venom 2, Venom kind of felt down and out on himself. And so I thought that was actually pretty smart to not involve Venom and stuff, to not make it too crazy, and to have the OG villains who you've already seen before in the film and not Venom. So, but in terms of getting everyone together, it was perfect. I'm not going to do it too specific as to how they did each one. They got Doc Ock. He was the first one. Second one was Jamie Foxx's Electro. Third one.
All right. So, what do you think of Electro?
Electro was really good to see him actually as a comic book accurate representation and a soft reboot. Because if you've seen the movie when he first appeared as Electro, it was a complete joke. And I feel like even Jamie Foxx knew that. I was almost embarrassed by that and kind of felt the burden by the role. Everyone has fun no matter what in being in a Spider-Man film, but you always want to be cooler. You want to be, how you think it's going to be. And so I feel like he really got to be his own Electro in this movie.
Yeah, what I really liked about it is they all made fun of their roles in the Spider-Man universes that they're from. Everyone made fun of themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was kind of like saying, hey, it was almost like the script saying, we know we're doing this. Like, we know we're doing this crazy of a thing that we have to acknowledge it, time and time again in a non-cheesy fashion. But, yeah, no, it was, so they got Doc Ock, and then Lizard was already captured by Doctor Strange. Yeah. So Lizard, Doc Ock, Electro, and then... Oh my gosh! Sorry, I'm just thinking of Sandman. Yeah. They got Sandman, and then it was really weird.
Sandman was friendly, so he didn't really, and Doc Strange sent him back.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, Sandman was basically friendly to the universe until he found out it wasn't his Peter Parker. Then he got a little bitchy.
Yeah, and the craziest part was seeing the way that William Dafoe played Green Goblin in this movie, because you got to see him sitting right next to Aunt May and the very first time you see him in terms of with Peter Parker. And that was like, I just shat myself, because no Spider-Man fan wants to see that, and I was like, so that instantly built suspense for him and that particular character for the rest of the movie. And I thought that was really good, and the blinding trust or faith that Tom Holland Spider-Man had was still present in that, and even though he just screwed up the time continuum, whatever space, for a second time now in his career as Spider-Man, so I think it was all, like, for sure a learning lesson in the end for him, But yeah, to see him back as Green Goblin was like the coolest thing for me, because he really was my like favorite actor in terms of a villain growing up for a short period of time, and it was just it was crazy to see him just sitting next to like Aunt May. I can't like focus on that enough. It was crazy. But then eventually Doctor Strange throws him in the prison, and then you have all of them. And then you see the thing from the trailers where Doctor Strange is trying to send them all back, and Peter's like, no, fuck that shit, and takes the box and runs, and you see that scene, which was, for sure, I think it was just long enough, because it wasn't dragged out, that scene either, in terms of getting sucked into like a pointless mirror dimension fight for 15 minutes.
Yeah, because it didn't add to the story at all. It was just eye candy. Yeah. But I mean, really good eye candy.
Yeah, it was really good eye candy. Yeah, and it's not that all you needed to know that Doctor Strange is way more overpowered than Spider-Man, and so I'm glad they didn't like do a 10-second scene of that and be like, hey, got the box back or whatever. But that Peter actually won that fight and actually had to fight for it, and you saw a continuous battle back and forth. But then you got to see Peter Parker's smart side of math and.
Yeah, you actually got to see him be a scientist.
Yeah, and so that was really cool to see him just do all that and use math against Doctor Strange, and knows everything in the universe and whatnot. So, numbers don't lie. Yeah, that was really good. But I was really concerned. I'm like, he's just trapping Doctor Strange, like it's just blindness. Like he has this youthful blindness of like reality and what's going on, the consequences that, he's the guy who just gave him the spell to fix his whole life. He's now just going to like, yeah, I'm just going to keep you there for whenever I need you.
Yeah, well, part of the whole lesson of the film for Spider-Man was Doctor Strange trying to teach him to think his actions through. Even though you got to make a bunch of decisions constantly, you have to think, step 3, if you do that, what's going to happen, then da-da-da-da. So that made sense as far as the story, coming back to that.
And so then once Doctor Strange is trapped in the mirror dimension, in the middle of 2 Grand Canyons, one vertical upside down and then one, normal. Once he's stuck there, it was also very crazy. There were so many actual crazy. People say crazy all the time about, oh, that was a crazy movie, or like this. Everything was like super shock value, and just enough, but it was like emotional shock value too, because you're so invested in these characters from watching Tom Holland's trilogy, And so, yeah, he brings the whole Sinister Five into Happy's apartment with Aunt May, and to see that, I was like, I was like, what's going on? I knew it wasn't gonna last long, and so I was pretty happy it didn't last too long. It wasn't like a minute scene or anything, but and then finally once to kind of skip through that, once they turn on him after they're all repairing themselves. Electro is in the process.
Yeah, they want to cure, quote unquote, cure, and there's a discussion about if you should cure someone or send them to their fate that they are supposed to do. Because basically, they were pulled over the moment they died, and then now that's their reality.
Yeah, and once Electro was getting his specific cure, which was just like electromagnetic, like heart piece. And then Doc Ock got his, and you saw Osborn working on his. And that scene where Doc Ock says, you're glad to get rid of your darker half, kind of alluding to, like, you're happy about this, right? Like, we're all, and he wasn't even questioning it, Doc Ock. He was just, like, we're all on the right paths here. And you didn't even see William Dafoe's face. And at first, it was like, oh, yeah, he is happy. And before he even turned his head, like the amount of time they just kept it on the back of his head, like you knew the character flip instantly.
Yeah, because he said one word. I don't remember what it was, but he said one word, and it was like
that was after he turned around.
That day.
Yeah, and so that was super awesome because I wanted more evil Gabi for sure. I didn't want to see him as the whole, innocent. Character that like psychotic character he plays. As much as I do love that, I want to see evil Gabi, and it was totally similar of him taking advantage of being in the house fire in the Spider-Man in the first Spider-Man film, where he had draped a very similar purple cloth over his head helmet, and was acting like he was a poor woman in need of a dire situation in terms of getting out of a fire. And so, and then he took advantage of Aunt May in the feast program, and then Aunt May was able to, kind of almost translate that manipulation to Peter, talking about like we help people and yada yada yada. And so, that was crazy. But I was really glad once they all turned and you knew, like, you're getting closer to the end fight scene. Not that I was trying to rush through the film. Well,
you're getting to the meat of it. Let's go already. Yeah. Story development happened. Okay, characters are set. Let's go.
Mm-hmm. And that happened, I'd say, about like halfway. And so I'd say about halfway it happened. Yeah. And so you literally see everybody kind of like barely fight. Just to give you a tease. Like Lizard got in a little altercation with Spider-Man. Electro did. Sandman was out of there.
There were little scuffles.
Yeah, like super little scuffles to say that like we're gonna scatter out now, and you'll deal with us once we're like ready. And so I was like, all right, cool. And then they're all gone and whatnot, and Peter had told Doctor Strange that he's going to need help, and so, you got Ned and MJ to find different Spider-Men, and so...
Well, no, what happened was, when Peter sent Strange back in through the portal, he spiderwebbed the ring off of his hand and gave it to Ned, and then started opening a portal, because once the attack happened from Gabi... The Green Goblin and basically, Aunt May was killed. That's when... so he disappears because Ned and MJ can't find Peter because they're worried about him. And then, so they open up a portal, and they say, oh, there's Peter. And then you see Spider-Man turn around and, run towards the portal, and he walks in, takes off his mask, and it's fucking...
Andrew Garfield.
Yeah.
It's actually Andrew Garfield. And I'm glad...
Huge crowd reaction.
Yeah, very huge crowd reaction for that. And I was happy they showed him first, because I didn't want Tobey Maguire to be shown first, and then everyone's freaking out over that, and then they barely show. They just give Andrew a little.
By the way, when Aunt May died, I cried. This movie made me cry like 5 fucking times. I ain't gonna lie, but when Aunt May, dude, great scene. Good on her. Great acting, Miss Tomei.
Yeah. I also did not mean to breeze by that either, but yeah. So in the fight, they all kind of vanish. Gabi is the first one to kind of return about that. Doc Ock is still there because he was friendly because Peter had just fixed him, and so that's when Aunt May does die, and that was a great scene. But kind of getting to the meat of things in terms of why Peter wants to really fix this so bad now, like on a whole nother level.
Yeah, he wants to spare Aunt May, Happy, and his friends the trouble of being hassled and their lives being affected because they know Spider-Man.
Yeah, and so when you see Andrew Garfield come in, he proves that he's Spider-Man. He just kind of does a little hop and sticks his fingertips to the ceiling, and then they still don't believe it. And then they're like, prove it more. And then Ned's mom or grandma, his grandma, was saying to get the cobwebs in whatever language she was speaking. So then Andrew Garfield does that, and then they believe him after that. Which was total Spider-Man comic book humor fashion. Right. When they showed Tobey Maguire back to back right after that.
Because I said, we can, I wonder how many Peters are out there. Well, we got to do this until we find the right one, is what they said. And then the next time, then you see Tobey Maguire walk in plain, he's got a suit jacket on, T-shirt, and kind of like Steve Jobs.
Yeah, he kind of had a Steve Jobs thing going. Casual Steve Jobs, not like a turtleneck presentation.
Yeah, right.
Let's go. Yeah, and you see Tobey Maguire, and that got, of course, the biggest crowd reaction. And then he's totally kind of like the innocent Peter Parker he was back in that film. You didn't see him he wasn't pissed off.
He got a massive reaction when he was on screen.
Yeah. Like I said, there was a huge crowd reaction for him, and I really liked how from there, those two Spider-Man were there. They, Tobey alludes to are there any places that Tom Holland Spider-Man would be that he goes to, and so. There's a funny banter between Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield. Andrew Garfield picks Empire State, and Tobey Maguire picked. I'm not sure. I think it was. I'm not too sure. Yeah, it was a different landmark that was just as good of a view, and so
building.
Yeah, and so then they go to Tom Holland Spider-Man, sitting in the rain, mourning Aunt May, and so first the two people who walk up to that specific Spider-Man are Mary Jane and Ned, which is appropriate. I didn't want all of them to bum rush him. It just didn't feel right to the character in the time, so they got their moment, and then Mary Jane says, "There's some people here," and that's when you just see Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield. Andrew Garfield was wearing a suit at the time. He was wearing a suit the whole movie. He actually was wearing a suit the entire movie. And then Tobey Maguire is still in his clothes that he came through the portal with, and it's almost like a Batman type of scene where they kind of hop down like an old water tower, right to the edge of a stoop of a building, and they're just talking to him. And at first, Tom Holland is just not trying to hear it at all, trying to shut down them and saying that they don't understand. And then, of course, they all give their stories of how they understand and whatnot. And there's a good, of course, emotional banter in terms of truth, and realizing Tom Holland, still needs to go about this and not just send them back to their fate and stick to the plan. And that's what Aunt May would have wanted. And, and then I did get the whole reason why Aunt May said, with great power comes great responsibility at first, because it is good to have both of them say that. Because then in his universe, it also meant something, Tom Holland's universe, not just because Tobey Maguire said it from his universe. And so it was cool to have Tobey Maguire finish the sentence that Tom Holland was going to say with, great power, and then you heard Tobey Maguire say, comes great responsibility. And so from there, they kind of know its game plan, and they all work as, like, scientist Peter Parkers. Like, very quick, super quick, because, that's, like, the least of the problems is just math to them. Saving the world is, like, bullshit.
Yeah. And Garfield did put on a lab coat over his Spidey suit for that one scene.
Yeah, he did. And, which was kind of cool to, like, kind of nod to, was it Dr. Connors?
Yeah. Exactly.
Because it did mean something to him in his universe, as well as Tobey Maguire's universe.
Yeah.
So that was definitely pretty cool. Do wish Tobey Maguire's Dr. Connors still got Lizard.
Yeah.
No offense to the guy who
Right.
did play him. I don't mean to say just the guy who played him. I do not know his name.
Right.
So and he did a really good job. It's just in terms of nostalgia. They could have, if you think about it, if that cast did just go through, there would have been a multiversal thing-ish kind of like variant, but it still really wouldn't matter. The story was still just executed just as well. And so, do you have anything to go on about that?
What is this? Where are we at?
Talking about how they got the whole Peter Parker's working as scientists. And
Oh, yeah.
getting to the bottom
Yeah,
of
so it's
different
great to
angles.
finally see, because, people who watch Spider-Man cartoons and read Spider-Man comics, Spider-Man's in part of everything usually is like he's in the lab and he's figuring shit out and, with Mary Jane or whoever, Flash Thompson was a fucking prick, so that kid did well. He was in there for a couple of scenes, so he played a douche. And
I will say he played a very good douche because I did fucking hate him. Like his whole character is completely just like somebody you don't like to see on screen. You kind of like almost get off screen in terms of not the actor but the character, like because he's such just like get out of here, like just give me the actual story we're going for here.
yeah, so the reason why they're working on the science is because they've decided that they're going to cure them and put the people back in their timeline, so when they go back they don't die but they're cured. So basically, that's the huge battle, and and that's what the battle takes place at Statue of Liberty.
And so they got all the cures, and Andrew Garfield is super ready to get the cure because he's cured a whole city with this stuff, and he knows the exact science. He's done it before. He mentions that.
Yeah.
And so, yeah,
He's like, oh, I've done this before. Like, he had to prove something, and Tobey Maguire's like, okay. Like, we didn't argue.
yeah, I thought that was pretty cool, and it was cool how you saw Toby and Tom working hand in hand at first. Which is, because there was a whole thing where Andrew Garfield knew his place in the movie as, like, even at one point he's mentioned as Spider-Man number 3. And so I think that was totally funny because he was kind of like, oh, like, it was just like a play in real life. Like, he is number 3 to a lot of people who have watched who grew up on all of the movies, not just didn't grow up on his. People who grew up on his Spider-Man, I've heard that they, of course, like his Spider-Man. And even people who didn't grow up on his stuff still think he's the best comic book, like, representation of just Spider-Man.
Yeah, I liked him.
Yeah, and I totally liked him. I think they should have given more, like, Peter Parker type scenes in the second Amazing Spider-Man.
Yeah, and in the beginning, also, Spider-Man came in. He had the Stark suit with the 8 extra arms.
Yeah, Iron Spider.
Iron Spider suit, and then his other suit, after he became famous, paint was thrown on it, and he was trying to get it off, wash it, flipped it inside out, and then we had that suit where the wires were there, and you could see the LED lights, and then they went back to the Stark suit, right?
Yeah, no,
because Doc Ock gave the nanobots back to Peter.
And Aunt May cleaned his suit and everything, and then and then Doc Ock gives the nanobites to Peter's freshly cleaned suit, and that's where you see the third suit in the movie. But once so they once they all get the cures together, they instantly go to the Statue of Liberty, and I thought it was really cool how they all had I don't know how much screen time it was, but I think it was I'd say 3 or 5 minutes of them just talking before any of the enemies got there. They got their own conversation piece. All 3 Spider-Men just waiting at the Statue of Liberty. I thought that was extremely cool.
Yeah, because they let the scene breathe for a while, and I want to know how much of that was scripted versus how much of it was improv between the actors.
That's true.
Because it's a lot of the interplay of them actually being Spider-Man, talking about being a superhero.
That's true.
And I thought that was fucking hilarious. That's one of the best scenes ever in comic book history, in my opinion.
Yeah, I do wish the one scene where we did get all the Peter Parkers pointing at each other from the meme you see on the internet.
Yeah.
We did not get the Spider-Man pointing at each other.
We'll do that in the next one.
Yeah. I think they even slightly pointed at each other when the 2 Spider-Men confront Tom Holland at morning on May. Spider-Man does point, Tom Holland does point, and I think Andrew Garfield kind of does like a chill motion with his hands, calm down. It was almost a point. I thought I saw it there. I was like, it didn't happen. That was just a funny thing to see when it did happen with the Peter Parkers, because they really did reinforce that to make sure that people did get that scene from the internet, because memes are alive for forever. They don't die.
Yeah, because Tobey Maguire plays the old sage Spider-Man, like the old man Logan type of,
Yeah, I'd say he plays I would say an older Spider-Man, a father Spider-Man. You don't know that he does have a kid, but it is alluded to that he has a family, that everything did work out with MJ. But yeah, so they go right to the Statue of Liberty, have a great conversation piece, and pretty much get right into action. Once they know that everybody's coming, the 2 Spider-Man, that is Andrew Garfield and Tom Maguire, separate, and it's just Tom Holland up there. And so first it's Electro, and there's Andrew Garfield and Tom Holland trying to defeat Electro. Tobey Maguire was in that scene as well, but he wasn't heavily. It was more Andrew Garfield redeeming himself against Electro. And then everyone did show up except Gobby right in the beginning. You saw Sandman. You saw the Lizard breaking out of a truck, an armored truck. He was down below. You had the Daily Bugle reporters reporting on the scene when everybody started to come to the scene. That is the villains. And to see Daredevil, I forgot to mention that, was pretty cool. You didn't see Daredevil. You saw Matt Murdock. It was completely his character from the Netflix series, 100%. I'm not sure if they...
As Spider-Man's attorney, I called.
Yeah. And I thought it was funny how everybody was breaking down the picture of that's his forearms on the table in the interrogation.
But I called that a year ago.
Yeah.
Way back.
Yeah, that Daredevil's going to be his attorney because it makes sense. They're in the Queens area. That was pretty cool. Somebody throws a brick through the window, and Matt Murdock catches it an inch away from Spider-Man's hand because Spider-Man was going to catch it too. Yeah. And so that was pretty cool. He just says, "I'm a good lawyer." So you know that there's something.
Hey, how'd you do that?
Yeah. He's like, "Oh, I'm a good lawyer," and whatnot.
And
so,
they just moved on.
Yeah, and that was really it because Spider-Man, he's seen a lot of things by now, so he already kind of knows what's up with his lawyer, and he knows he's totally gonna beat whatever case.
And stakes are high. So
yeah,
move on.
And so they do move on. I don't think it would have been appropriate to bring in Daredevil for the end scene at all. That would have discredited the 3 Spider-Men. They could have had Daredevil kind of show up in a mirror dimension or something. They could have included him in that, possibly by trying to help Spider-Man. let's say Doctor Strange ran into. I'm not sure. I could say that there would have been a way to involve Daredevil in the movie that wouldn't have felt over pushed, in my opinion. But it still would have been a very short cameo regardless. So it still wouldn't have done justice to the hardcore Daredevil fans. But that means you will see them on screen together in the future. They don't do that for no reason at Marvel.
Right.
And you did see Kingpin the day before Spider-Man released in Hawkeye. So that to me that tells me that Daredevil is going to be in Hawkeye. I hope, because why would you put him in the biggest movie to come out of Marvel?
Well, that too. Well, the TV universe that they're having, and then you have She-Hulk coming out, who's also an attorney, so they're probably going to be going against each other in court, frequently.
Yeah, and so I think it would be a really good reason to bring that Daredevil into Hawkeye, because then people who just saw Spider-Man are going to hear about that in Hawkeye and then binge walk Hawkeye, because I think it's only 6 episodes that they're coming out with. Yeah. So it's not like a series where people are like, oh yeah, I didn't watch the Daredevil series because it was however many episodes and however many seasons.
Well, right, yeah, they could do like a Hell's Kitchen thing, and Daredevil's, he's, you have all the Marvels, and they're building the Young Avengers and shit, and now he's working with Spider-Man, so.
Yeah, to get back towards the end scene, once everybody shows up, every Spider-Man got their respective solo time in terms of their own CGI scenes and fighting everybody and all the villains, and then they also got to have respected time with each other and almost like slinging off their own webs and doing all types of creative Spider-Man shit. That was of course really cool and really crazy to see. Like I was just kind of
one of the funniest fucking things was when Tobey Maguire's making a joke about cracking his back, and then Andrew Garfield fucking cracks his back for him.
Yeah, that was in the funny banter before the villains show up. Yeah. That was a really good scene.
Yeah, because he had actually hurt his back.
Yeah, he hurt his back. Supposedly hurt his back on a Spider-Man film, but. Was actually proven to not. I'm not saying he faked it, but he overplayed that role massively in going for his next Spider-Man movie. I had actually read today, and so he actually promised, and he was fired. He was actually fired from being Spider-Man, and so before Spider-Man 3, this is Spider-Man 2, and so he was actually fired, and Tobey Maguire's representatives. From the sources that I read, and there was a lot of sources saying this. It wasn't just
right,
one.
He was also dating like the studio head's daughter.
Yeah, and so which I did not know about, and
broke up.
So that had happened. So I thought it was really funny to see that, because it's not only Tobey Maguire's the older Spider-Man, back cracking or whatever, but it was like, yeah, I almost lost my job, like kind of like over this little thing. And I'm not saying he wasn't right or wrong. It was all about the stunts. He didn't want to perform a lot of the stunts. It's not that he didn't ask to have the film be delayed too long or whatever, but he did ask for the film to be delayed a little bit, and they were like, no, and whatnot. And he was medically cleared, and so everything was good. And he did he did say something about it in the press, and he said that he would never. He has to do anything for the job, and he would never do anything to not serve the job.
Like, even like in his part in this one, he didn't do a lot of stunt work. I mean, like when he was on screen and doing it was, but what he did made sense story-wise, and it wasn't a distraction at all. He's, he's an older guy. You got a back issue.
Yeah, it was no big deal. It was complete CGI in terms of like all of his fight scenes and whatnot. I mean, all the Spider-Man's fight scenes, but to see his suit again was super cool, because that's the OG Spider-Man suit, and so so the whole fight scene happens. I don't want to like break down everything extremely detail by detail, but they individually team up. They realize it's it's not working up. They meet up. They team up. In terms of like, we have to stick to each other and pick one person at a time. They do that. They go through everybody, and as soon as you think it's like, okay, things are kind of getting good, Gabi is still not shown up yet. And so I think they had just got think they were still trying to get Lizard. Or I think there was one more villain left, and that they still didn't get. They just got him, and while Mary Jane is falling off the scaffolding, and so is Ned, because there was a fight scene. To be specific, they walked through a portal that Ned couldn't close because he was a rookie with the portals and whatnot. They were on location at the Statue of Liberty, which just made sense in terms of story, in terms of like the trailers, like how they're going to even get up there, supposed to be there. And so Mary Jane does fall. Tom Holland, you see in the trailer, dive and almost by fingertips catches her, and Gabi comes in slow motion. And just like you almost think he like doesn't kill Spider-Man, but stabs him with the pointy ends that kill Norman Osborn, because that's the exact way he got hit. Maybe it wasn't directly in the middle; it was just off to the right. And then Andrew Garfield sweeps down, saves MJ, asks MJ if she's okay, and MJ's like, yeah, I'm okay, because she's a tough broad in the movie, and like respectfully. And then Andrew Garfield was just tearing up because he couldn't save Gwen. And then Mary Jane was like, "Are you okay?"
Right. So yeah. So basically, what the Spider-Men wind up doing is they wind up correcting the karma from their series of Spider-Man movies. Their big kill that fucked them up in the head. They basically reverse that and solve it through karma, kind of a thing, I guess.
Yeah, and
but it was very well done. It wasn't cheap.
Yeah, it wasn't cheap at all. And so once Spider-Man and Gabi kind of tussle, and Gabi falls off his glider onto the Captain America shield that has fallen off the Statue of Liberty and is now like half on the concrete platform that the Statue of Liberty is on and halfway into the water. You just see Peter Parker like slowly realize that he's got a chance to kill Gabi. Like he even says, "I'm gonna kill you." And Gabi almost plays like it reminded me so much of what he would have been if he was cast as Joker. He was very psychotic as soon as he said that, because it was Batman versus Joker, in my opinion. In that moment, there was the same characters like colliding in terms of past and everything, because now Gabi has just been tortured for all the Spider-Man, especially Tom Holland in that moment. And so I kind of wish it was more brutal, the fight scene with Tom Holland and Gabi, in terms of the actual fighting aspect of it. I wish it was more brutal. I wish it was...
Yeah, one question about Gabi. Did you notice that he's fucking teeth? Like, there's William Dafoe teeth, and then the other time, like, he had fucking... What the hell was that?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I subconsciously, I did notice that at one point, and it just left my brain instantly. Because I was so wrapped up in the movie, but it did hit in my brain, and I will have to go back and watch it, which I probably am going to go see it in theaters, maybe even tonight, or for sure within the next week. So I do wish that fight scene was a little bit more brutal. It didn't make sense, the fact that it wasn't just Peter on top of Gabi just punching him repeatedly. You did get that towards the end of that fight scene with both of them. But I want it to be like a complete brutal, like I want to see nose breaks, bleeding, like you just killed Aunt May.
Well, yeah, he was pummeling the shit out of him, and both Spider-Man were watching like they understood the pummeling. Yeah. They're even like, but yeah. And then that's when he picked up the thing where he
picked up Norman's glider in a super cool fashion,
just like Gabi did.
Yeah, and went to go stab him, and then Tobey Maguire just comes within inches of the blade, just like he did in the previous Spider-Man films, and just stares at Tom Holland. I thought that was really cool. There wasn't
smiling, not in anger.
He didn't smile at first. He wasn't angry, but he was like questioning, like, well, what are you going to choose in this moment? Like Tobey Maguire Spider-Man was concerned in his face of like, you're going to stop this, and then also, what are you going to do in this moment? And so Tom Holland finally decides, and of course he's going to not do that and go with original Aunt May plan, and to go through with that. And so Tom McGuire smiles and everything, and he stabs that motherfucker with toxin in the neck, Gobby, and so there's that, and everything's good in terms of the villains. They're all
Which was the only spoiler that you saw online, basically, right?
yes. So I did see a few spoilers, which was the Tom McGuire's back seen as a thumbnail of that, and as well as Tom Holland stabbing William Dafoe in the neck with the Gabi serum, the anti Gabi serum.
Yeah, and then Doctor Strange returned. When Doctor Strange returns, they basically kind of wrap it up. The sending of
They wrap up the villains in that moment, but now it's the time and space is just breaking, kind of like the Doctor Who rip in time and space, but it was multiple of them, and so Doctor Strange is doing everything, and Doctor Strange even says to Tom Holland Spider-Man to not make it where everybody doesn't know him, because Tom Holland brings up like, hey, let's just go back to the original plan. And Doctor Strange was like, no, because now he's had emotional connection, because he's just defeated Doctor Strange he defeated him physically and mentally and won. Yeah. And so Doctor Strange was like, this kid is something else. Like he's not just a young kid that he thought that made all these mistakes and just completely fucked up time again. So you see that, and Doctor Strange says his final goodbye in terms of like you better say your final goodbyes, and then Tom Holland says, okay, thank you, sir, thank you, Steven, blah, 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 there's that thing. And then Doctor Strange says, goodbye, kid. And then he's still doing the spell and holding everything in place. And so, he says goodbye to the Spider-Man, Tobey Maguire, and Andrew Garfield. There's a moment with them, and it wasn't rushed, but it was quick, because it's like, we fought for this. Everybody gets to go home now. Nobody's going to want to stay at a war scene, Mm-hmm. So they're all happy. And then he goes to Mary Jane and Ned and explains, like, you guys are going to forget me, but I'm going to figure out a way to make sure that you guys remember all this shit. But for right now, I'm letting you know what's up. You got no choice to go on my decisions about this. This is the way it's going to end, and you guys will forget me, and their final goodbyes. And then kind of like the end game, the villains dissipate and everything, and the spell works. You see Spider-Man move into a new apartment at the end. He goes to a coffee shop. Mary Jane's working. Ned comes in. They're still friends in that universe, as if they've never met Tom Holland. And, there's an interaction with Spider-Man and Ned. Interaction with Spider-Man and Mary Jane, and Tom Holland doesn't decide to give him the note that he had wanted to write for her, and so he kind of just lets it be, and is like, okay, that his friends are not involved, and he knows he's gonna fix it. It's just kind of hard for him, but he knows that they're okay at least and happy, and they got accepted to MIT, and that was that whole thing. And then you got to see Spider-Man in his new suit at the end. He made his own suit, because Aunt May isn't going to make his suits anymore, or Tony Stark. He doesn't have any parent figures. He has to do that shit now, learn the technology.
Yeah, he's literally a man alone in the world.
Yeah, and so nobody knows. Happy doesn't know. There's a scene where, of course, he's at Aunt May's tombstone, and Happy is also there when he walks up. Or Happy walks up to Tom Holland and said, how do you know her? And he said, oh, I knew her through Spider-Man. And there's that thing, like, okay, nobody knows who he is. And then, from there.
Right. So here's my thinking. Okay, so if he knows him through Spider-Man, is that Miles Morales? Are we going to find?
That's very true.
You know what I mean?
That's very true.
Be another Spider-Man.
That is extremely true, because Jamie Foxx even said, man, what the fuck? There's got to be a black Spider-Man out here somewhere in the end. And I thought that was a great scene, because I'm like, where's Miles? Where's Miles?
Okay, so after credits was the whole Venom thing, and pre credits, and then the after credits was
after credits was just a trailer to the new Doctor Strange movie. That's all it was. Not that it was bad, but that's all it was. And but yeah, it was just the Venom thing where he got blipped in the universe just like at the end of Venom, and then he got blipped out just like he did in this movie. And other than that, to wrap things up, it was a complete 11 out of 10 movie in my opinion.
Yeah, it's 12 cups out of 12 cups of coffee, a coffee cake, and a fucking steak dinner.
Yeah, so I mean, people might have super minor complaints about the film, but it would have to be the most minor things, and it's probably more self-enduring of what you want. Like, oh, I wanted to see Toby more, but everyone got to see him just enough. The story worked perfectly, and you have to realize that it's extremely hard to make a movie on that level, that cohesive, and actually sell it the way it's packaged. You know, and so the fact that they're able to do that, people have to realize that that's a whole thing within itself. You know, people thought Avengers Endgame was will they get the Netflix characters or anything like that? Like, they can even pull that shit off.
Yeah, it worked out really good because it could have been hokey.
Yeah, and the Avengers Endgame was $1 billion, and they still couldn't pull that off.
Right.
And so I'm not saying this movie wasn't a low budget, but still with less money, they were able to pull off more than Avengers Endgame did, and that's why, to me, Seth Kustush, it is my favorite movie of all time, and yeah, that's about wraps it up on mine.
Awesome, and thanks for coming on, Seth. I love you, baby.
Love you too. Take care, Dad.
Alrighty, that was Spider-Man No Way Home, spoiler edition. Thank you, everybody, and thank you for listening to your favorite neighborhood podcast, Creativity Talking. Biff,
Yes, sir.
why don't you take us out for the day?
Sounds good to me. And I'm glad you enjoyed your movie, boys.
Thank you, Biff. Everyone, have a great one. And don't forget to find us on vaudevillepress.com. Later, everybody.